The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Fast am I, good afternoon. Welcome to Mannin Line on Manx Radio. Open line through till 1, so your thoughts please. The floor's yours. The lines are open on 66 13 68. Text 166 177. WhatsApp on the same number, 166 177, but you'll need us in your contacts. And you can email studio@manxradio.com. Is anybody testing for COVID, by the way? Opinions seem split down the middle. Certainly, this new variant of COVID-19 is in circulation, but Public Health isn't testing for variants in the Isle of Man, so can't confirm whether COVID cases are here from this group of variants known as FLIRT, F-L-I-R-T. So we'll see anyway, but it'll be interesting to know. Some people, it seems, are just ploughing ahead without testing. Other people seem intent on testing. Anyway, any thoughts on that? Text, email, call, WhatsApp. Howard's with us today. Hi, Howard.
Hello, Andy. I've just listened to your news there, and I'd heard that this was in the offer and that David Ashford is going to try, and that is a big word, to get answers from the DOI minister. I admire his tenacity, but I think the DOI minister and the supporting officers within there, it'll just be a filibuster. They'll just keep talking until such times that people, well, you can't get anything else in. It's what happened to the last session in Parliament here. This is about the horse trams. Now, I remember when before they even made a start on the promenade, they'd bought sufficient rails to do a double track from one end to the other. And he's quite right, and I've asked her several times myself on your programme, what has happened to those rails and where are they stored, and are they still in existence? Because they had to adapt these rails. They brought a chap over from Germany who ground the surface of the rails down after they'd been fitted. So somebody in DOI probably had a brainstorm and said, oh, the early ones weren't sufficient, they weren't good enough. We'll scrap this lot and put the money in the kitty. And but whether that's happened or not, I don't know. That's a supposition.
Well, we've had a few rumours, and the rumour is, and it may be true, it may be not, it could be skeet anyway, that the rails are in a compound at the back of the lifeboat station.
Oh, the old harbour board yard.
And apparently, well, we sent John Moss down today, and John probably stuck his head through the railings. He's got a photo of some very rusty railings in that compound at the back of the lifeboat station. So it may be, there are some rails there. Whether or not they're the horse tram rails, we don't know, but there are rails there, and we're waiting for confirmation.
There used to be a steam crane on the Battery Pier, and those rails went from just about where the tanker berth is now, right in alongside the fuel tanks in Manx Petroleums, and further into where the porter cabins are now, basically for the lifeboat. But that was all part of the harbour board yard, and the steam crane, it was farcical, really. We had the tanks down there with petroleum and oils and whatnot in, and then they used to fire this crane up, and I mean literally fire it up, alongside the tanks. There'd be something like 1,500 ton of fuel sitting down there in one of the tanks, and they'd be lighting the furnaces on this steam crane to get it workable. And that's when Jeff Duke had his Ron agency, and they used that crane for lifting the containers on and off.
Oh, right.
Yeah, but that's long since. If you look at old photographs, you'll see it down there, a photograph of it on the Battery Pier. It used to cross over the front of where the Manx Petroleum's entrance is, and down. I don't know whether the rails are still there. There was no point in taking them up, but they should still be there somewhere. But that may be what you were seeing inside. But they did buy enough, and it was from across. They were shipped over from a defunct railway and brought them over, and they were boasting that they'd bought them relatively cheap, and they would do to replace the rails when the promenade was refurbished.
Right.
And that must be, I don't know, rattling on, creeping up to about 10 years now. So the rails were bought. They were put in, I don't know, they were kept. I think they've been moved since the original arrival on the island. I heard they were out at Ellerslie, out at Glenvine. Whether that's part of the Highway Board yards and all, you see. There's a big depot out there. But David, more power to his elbow, because when Mr. Baker was the head of the Minister of DOI, he was part and parcel of the lack of the trams going right the way through. And even when they got to Broadway, they had a cock up there, excuse me, but I've known those trams all my life, and I've seen the points. When they used to come through to the sea terminal, the trams used to go beyond a set of points, then come back, and they would automatically change to go onto the next line to go back home again. So this lot, when they were doing the promenade, they couldn't even work out how to do it. And they've put a damn big lever down there at the bottom of Broadway, like the Fat Controller would use, and that there, they had to work it out. And even then, there were weeks and weeks and weeks, and they had to get this thing made across, and the point system to change the tram. Yet, in the early days when the trams were built, they put the point system in, and that was in the Victorian days, and it worked perfectly well until they ripped the whole damn thing up.
And I seem to remember when they opened, didn't it derail on the first day?
Probably did, because there was a rise in the rails, and that's why they allegedly brought this chap over, the only man in the world with a grinder machine, to take the top edge off the rails. This is when they'd actually been laid and were in situ, and they did find that there was a problem with them, and he was several weeks here with this equipment going along, grinding the rails flat, because they're not ordinary rails. These ones that's been delivered into here are ex-railway lines, but the other ones are tram lines.
How far do you think David Ashford's going to get, Howard?
Well, as I say, another filibustering session. They'll just talk and talk and talk, and he'll come out of there. God help the man. He's trying his best, but I'm afraid he's up against a lot of people within government, ministers, MHKs, and the like, who are adamant this is not going to go through. But I hope he gets questions, because if it goes down in Hansard, that question stays there infinite. So he has the right to a proper answer, and if the Minister of the DOI does not give him a proper answer, an honest answer, which is unusual for a politician, then there should be serious questions asked of the ability of the DOI minister. But I was coming along the promenade on Saturday, and I don't know if anybody else has noticed it. The promenade seems reasonably smooth. It's not a bad surface for the time being, but it's not been down that long. But I noticed as I was going past, it was in the area around about the Queen's Hotel. It was like driving over rumble strips. Just for about 50 or 100 yards. And I thought, oh, what's that? Something gone wrong with my car. But then as I cleared that, it was back to being the normal blow-knock surface. Is the problems underneath that, round by the Queen's Hotel?
Oh.
Do we have subsidence there?
Oh, cracky, don't say that, Howard.
I know, but I thought, oh, has there something gone wrong with the suspension of my car? But it wasn't. It was perfectly all right. But all I could hear was brr, 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 brr.
Well, if anybody's driving along Queen's Promenade when it's safe and legal to do so, please tell us if you're getting those noises.
Yeah, it's just like being on rumble strips. But more power to David Ashford's elbow, because he's got an uphill struggle here within government to get an honest answer and where £1 million has gone missing.
OK, all right, thanks, Howard.
Take care, bye now.
All right, 16 minutes past 12, and David's on now. Hi, David.
Hi, Randy. Just quickly, too, the biggest obstacle on the prom is at the far end, coming up Summer Hill, is the scaffolding, which has been there now for probably about 4 or 5 months now. and still no thing of getting the building fixed. And
I'm trying to figure out, is it holding the building up, or is it there to knock it down? What's it there for?
I think it's just supporting a little bit, but it's not actually. I've looked at some of it. It's not touching, but I'm surprised they're able to do it because of the horses coming out of the stables there, because it's got Harris fencing all around it. I'd love to find out whether it still complies with health and safety, but it wasn't said. I want to talk about that. And the rails are at the back of the lifeboat place. I remember them ordering them, being part of it, saying it was a great idea. In fact, it was Phil Gorn who was the minister at the time, and we all said, yes, this is a good idea. But anyway, we'll see. But what I was trying to get onto, I've sent you a couple of pictures about this Q car, which I can't seem to get a direct answer now from the DOI, the Vehicle Testing Centre, or the police, or what they call them, the Eastern Neighbourhood Team. Now, the vehicle now has travelled back towards its home. I don't know how it got there. And the lady who rang me today and said, David, come and have a look at this. I said, don't worry, I've already been to see it, took a photograph of it. And I did notice, too, while I was there, some of the vehicles which are, in my opinion, abandoned, but they belong to him, extending the pavement. Now, that's a clear offence, too. So what is the DOI doing when we know other police, there's Q plates on it? I've looked at the Welsh thing. It said the vehicle or this registration doesn't exist on there, and we have loads of people in the Howe Road now where we have these other vehicles left in different parts of the highway. Some of them are not bad-looking cars. It would make a fine museum if you stuck it in a shed somewhere.
Are they all taxed,
the one I was going to mention too.
Are they all taxed?
Well, I haven't looked at all of them recently, but I'll check and just have a little look when I have a little walk around. And if people say I'm nosing, but people ask you different things, they say to you, we've got, remember the horse box?
Oh, yes, yes.
He's back. So we got rid of the old camper vans. 2 camper vans went to heaven or somewhere. But now we got this huge, big horse box. I actually seen the fella. It was a young couple that went down the road when I was waiting to go into Bowls in the car. He was looking for a big enough space where they could park it, and he went round the block twice and finally got into it. But my concern is there. People can't go to the park. It's a lovely park in Onken, and you get cheap prices as a plug. And we need car parking. We don't need trucks to be left lying there, or vehicles which are camper vans. What are they there for? I don't know. But I just wonder what's happening when we had Tim on. I think you touched on the thing, Mr. Robinson. Whatever happened to Mr. Robinson's idea about heavy goods vehicles and size of vehicles? It's not going away. It's going all around the island. People are getting frustrated, especially when they're small terraced houses and they have huge, large vehicles sitting there week after week.
That's a problem. That's not going to get any less, is it? Because people are still going to be given vans to take home.
Yeah. Well, we need there was a consultation. The DOI put it out under Jeff Robinson's name, and maybe we have to go to the chief executive now, Emily Curfew, and say, Emily, what are we doing with this issue that's on the island? It's something they can solve. They don't have to spend a lot of money, do they? They just pass laws and legislation.
Interesting.
Fairly easy.
Okay, all right, good to hear from you. Thanks, David.
Bye.
We got to the point last Friday, I think, or was it Thursday, before the special for Glen Faber and Peel. I think there were about 8 reasons you could have a Q plate. But if that Q plate isn't, if you can't find out who it is or whether or not it exists, then surely that can hardly be legal if you can't trace a particular registration plate. Thoughts, email. This is the tale, by the way. It's about Douglas MHK David Ashford, who wants to know when the Tynwald resolution to reinstate the entire tramway will be fulfilled and the trams will go from Derby Castle to the sea terminal as they used to. for years, for decades. Now, of course, they halt by Castlemona Avenue, and that's it, the home of the Half-Way Horse Tram. Currently, they're running between there and Derby Castle. And David Ashford wants to know what's happened to the track's purchase for the stretch of line from the Sea Terminal to the War Memorial. Well, we found some tracks at the back of, opposite the lifeboat headquarters in Douglas, but we don't know whether they are those or not, but they're certainly very rusty and they're there. Anyway, if you know where they are, you can put a drone up now because there's no TT on, so you won't get prosecuted. If anybody knows where they are, then do tell us. Julian's on now. Hi, Julian.
Hi, Andy. Let's hope the precedent of the horse tram rails, where they were promised to be put in, isn't repeated with the Southern Swimming Pool.
Well, it just, I just wonder who is making these decisions. Is it politicians? Is it senior civil servants? Is it between themselves? Or I wish they'd just say whose idea it is.
What was that expression in the manifestos? Accountability and transparency.
Oh, you couldn't move for transparency.
Oh, I know. Another little thing, just before I get on my main point, I noticed that the extension to the Jet Centre at Ronaldsway, they're calling it a sustainable aviation hub. How does that sound sustainable when you've potentially got one person on a big... I mean, you've seen the size of those private jets. How's that sustainable? You know, if you take the carbon footprint that we're also worried about for one person on a jet that can seat 20...
I would imagine they're buying carbon credits, wouldn't you?
Yeah, nice if you can buy those carbon credits, isn't it?
Well, there we are. That's one way round it, to purchase carbon credits, but of course that will separate the rich from the hoi polloi, won't it?
Yeah, assuming that you believe that carbon is bad for you and CO2 and not something that's used in all commercial greenhouses to get 3 times the vegetable yield for production of food.
Quite right. I know those polytunnels that are all over the UK at the moment, whenever they've got solar triggers, that whenever the sun gets high enough, they fire up heaters, enormous gas heaters, to blow carbon monoxide down the polytunnels, which then turns into carbon dioxide. But anyway,
exactly.
That's just for cucumbers.
Well, speaking of all this, the IPCC, which is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is the UN arm for climate policy, their latest assessment report, which is number 6, so it's referred to as AR6. If anyone's interested to look at it, if you Google for IPCC AR6 full document, you'll be presented with a 1,000-page report. But the bit to focus in on goes straight to Chapter 12. This concerns the IPCC's assessment of extreme weather events. And when you look at the graph with the bars that they have, they're showing low confidence from the scientists in any increase in number or severity, and I shall quote verbatim, floods, rainstorms, landslides, drought, fire weather, cyclones, hurricanes, tornadoes, sandstorms, dust storms, hail, sea level rise, coastal flooding and erosion, also low confidence in any decrease in snow, glaciers, ice sheet, as well as lake, river and sea ice. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, known as NOAA, are saying that tornado trends, the number of strong and violent tornadoes hasn't varied since 1970, which looks quite interesting. And also a report published in Nature magazine in 2022 states the global annual number of tropical cyclones has decreased by 13% compared with pre-industrial baseline of 1850 to 1900. Now, what is interesting is that the AR6 paper is really all of the scientific bit when they've just said that there is low confidence in anything to do with increase in any of the things that we're talking about. However, they publish a side document which is called a summary for policymakers, which is a distilled bullet point version. And what's interesting with that boiled down few pages, it has to be approved by government, line by line. So you're immediately getting a non-scientific interface between the data, and what the public are told. And I'm not quite understanding why the government has anything to do with the vetting of those bullet points. So immediately what you have is, when you have things that are boiled down and distilled, you lose all the detail. So you can focus in on certain things and ignore other things, like there is a low confidence in any increase in any of the things that I mentioned. So going by, their own metrics, if there's a low confidence with scientists that there's any increase in any of the things that we're being told on the news, then shouldn't we be looking more detailed kind of explanation as to why we're getting all these scare stories?
Interesting. Okay. All right. Appreciate that, Julian. Thanks for calling today.
Thanks, Andy. Cheers.
Good
Bye.
to hear from you. I want to go to, let me see, Nick's with us now. Hi, Nick.
Hi, good afternoon, Andy, everybody else. Can you hear me all right?
Loud and clear.
Okay, I had a quick question. People were asking about the Q-Reg registrations and whatnot.
Nick, you're going to need to turn your radio down because we're now going. You're sounding like Adamski at the moment.
Okay, how's that?
That's great.
Okay, yeah. Anyway, about registrations, we have a camper, and we were out down south over the weekend, and we were next to another converted, what looked like a rigid lorry, almost like where you'd see a trans man curtain side wagon. It's a huge thing, and it was converted, and I was curious about it.
Yeah.
So I looked up the registration to see the weight. I wanted to know the weight, and it said that it was a Category B, which is 3.5 tons or less. And it was definitely not a 3.5 ton vehicle, because that's like our vehicle, which is, Category B and less than 3 tons. But that's like, I don't know, a long wheelbase van, like a flooring van or a carpenter's van. But it was definitely not that weight. I mean, it was much, 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 much heavier than that. But on top of that, I looked up the make of the vehicle, which it was a Mercedes 815B, excuse me, and then on Google, that showed a small minivan, the size of a long wheelbase transit, one of those high transit vehicles. So I'm wondering, how is the registration showing a different vehicle on that, a different registration is connected with a different vehicle entirely, yet it's still registered.
And whereabouts is the vehicle, Nick?
Oh, it's no longer where it was. It moves around. I think I've seen it parked outside Heron and Brearley quite often. If that's the same one, I'm not sure.
Right.
But it's a massive thing with the chimney coming out the top. Wood burner inside and all
right.
that. I mean, it looks great. It looks like an Overlander kind of thing, but it's got a proper cab. Like a tilt forward cab to access the engine, and yet it's registered as a small, maybe in like what you might look at LDVs used to look like.
Well, I wonder how. How would that happen?
I haven't got a clue, but I thought maybe Howard might know, because he's well versed in these things, and he's pretty much knowledgeable about everything.
All right.
And I just thought he might call in and explain that, because it baffles me, because my license, I can't drive anything bigger than 3.5 tons, because I got my license after 1997. So I was just curious. I'm kind of limited at what I can drive at the moment, but I would love something like that. But if I put a registration on there that said it was a 3.5 ton pickup, I could drive something that's 10 tons.
All right. Okay.
A 10-ton Volvo.
Appreciate that, Nick. Thanks for reporting that today. Good to hear from you.
All right. Cheers. Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
12:30 on Manx Radio. The residents of Rietna Bay home have been told that only 30 are going to be moved to the new building. There are 48 residents at Albert Terrace, give or take normally. So what happens to the ones that aren't picked? Says Onken Lady. Crikey. So 30 out of 48 will be going to the new place, Summerhill Views. My question, says Zippy, whether the horse trams will go around or across the roundels. I wonder. The tram tracks were ground down to reduce noise, apparently, says Dewan, and the new rails for the horse trams or the steam railway were bought by Mr. Longworth. Well, Ian Longworth was in charge of buses, wasn't he, at DOI, and an area cleared for the storage of them at Battery Pier Yard. If I remember correctly, there are 2 miles worth of rails. The DOI minister will be able to give the answer supplied to him by the people who were left since the rails were bought. And this is probably the point of it all at the moment. We have had quite a few infrastructure ministers since those rails were purchased. Maybe it was Mr. Harmer at the time, previously, who took over, I think, from Phil Gaughan, who was the minister up until 2016. Ray Harmer. Since then, we've had Tim Baker, we've had Chris Thomas, now it's Tim Crookall. Although, I have to say, if the Government Communications Department are listening, and I know they are, then you might like to take a look at the Department of Infrastructure as a Wikipedia page, which still shows Ray Harmer as Minister for Infrastructure. So if you'd like to bring it up to date, that would probably get everybody on the same page. Regarding the horse tram track not being laid, why isn't the person who agreed to diverting the monies called to the bar of Tynwald for contempt and subverting Tynwald's will? Says Texter 667. Charlie says, I wouldn't hold my breath about David Ashford arguing to get the horse trams to run the length of the prom. He can't get that public footpath open in Williston. So I don't know what's going to happen. Well, let's hear from David Ashford, shall we? David Ashford, North Douglas MHK, and this is basically what on earth is happening to the other half of our Half-Way Horse Tram. This is David Ashford, whether he thinks we're ever going to see the tram tracks fully reinstated. When? If?
Well, I would hope before we celebrate the 150th anniversary, which is 2026, if my memory serves me correct. This was the decision of Tynwald in 2017. I was sat there at the time, so I remember it very well. It was actually pointed out that that money that was being awarded also was to complete the single line track to the sea terminal. At some point that has changed, not by Tynwald, never come back to Tynwald to say that's a change. It has been done purely within DOI. So I have several questions down, 2 questions in fact. One of them to find out when was that change made, who made that change crucially, why it was done, but then also, we keep hearing, when things allow, we will actually consider it. Well, what does that mean? As you say, does it mean this century? Does it mean the next century? Does it mean in the next 10 years, the next 50 years? And also I want to know, because I know at the time the additional track was purchased, where is that track? Is it being used for anything? And if so, what? Is it just still sat around? And what kind of condition is it in now after the several years?
It does seem a little perverse, I think, to many people that the section of horse tram track that we have seems to be the less popular bit.
Well, it's the front facing. People come off the sea terminal. Surely, if you're going to have a heritage offering, what you want is it front and centre of them when they come out of the sea terminal. Not say, well, if you walk up that way, past all the shopping centre and up, then you might get a chance to get on a horse tram. It goes from nowhere to nowhere, really, at the moment. But the will of Tynwald was very, very clear in 2017. That money hasn't been used for what the will of Tynwald was. So I want to know what DOI is doing about it, because at the moment there's just been really vague promises of, we've spent it now, that money's gone, a bit of tough luck, when we've got some more we might consider it.
And you will know that this issue divides opinion across the island. There are plenty of people who are probably already throwing things at the radio set saying we should never have spent the money on the track that we've already put down, let alone spend further money on this relic of the past.
Oh, very much so. It's a Marmite issue. The debate should really be, do we want a proper functioning horse tram the whole way along, or do we not want a service? Not doing things halfway.
David Ashford, MHK, and he'll be asking questions in Tynwald about, what's going to happen. Julian's got a very good point, says Andy, about the southern swimming pool. How can its building be assured when the same trick can be pulled to divert monies or escape part of the project against the will of Tynwald, with no repercussions and no sanctions? Francesca dropped a note in and just says, underneath all this, Andy, there's either a civil servant or a politician looking at the public saying, who do you think you are?
Hello there, this is Dr. Alex Allinson, Treasury Minister, and I'd really like to wish Manx Radio a very happy 60th birthday. Well done.
With unlimited broadband from Shaw from £39.50 a month, you'll be laughing.
Shaw Fibre Broadband. It's the lowest price on island. For more details, see us in store or visit shaw.com. T's and C's apply.
Find a hidden gem in the Isle of Man, the Abbey Restaurant Ballasalla. This old country house offers a relaxed and sophisticated atmosphere where you can wind down with unique and interesting fresh food and drinks, from dinner with fine wines to tea and exquisite cakes. Enjoy our fantastic lunch menu with fresh specials or join us for afternoon tea and dinner. To book, click theabbey.im, find the Abbey on Facebook or call 822 393.
These days, time is a precious commodity. It's difficult to balance work, life and play, but enjoying quality rest and relaxation is essential for our overall well-being. We need downtime, time for ourselves, time for stressless. At Millichaps of Ramsey, most stressless recliners come in multiple sizes, so you're sure to find the perfect fit. Relax your body, free your mind, and discover the ultimate in comfort in the stressless studio at Millichaps.
Voices.
From June 24th to June 28th, the celebration of 60 years of the people whose voices came to you out of the Manx radio speakers. The famous, the infamous, the voices that became part of the Manx way of life.
And Marge online too. Hello, Marge.
Hi, David.
Hello.
Now, to get back to congratulations to Manx Radio on your Sunday morning programmes. They really are very good, you know, from 9 o'clock.
It continues the celebration of the nation station. 5 programmes starting on Monday, June the 24th. The Mannin Line revisited.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
22 minutes before 1. Eddie's on now. Hi, Eddie.
Hi, Andy. All right.
Good, thanks. Yeah.
Good. Nice sunny day. Everybody's happy. Just listening over the last couple of years, really, to everything, mind you, probably all time, the lack of trust in the government, the lack of faith in the government, it just seems to go on and on with everything. I mean, there's some of the discussions this morning about the trams. Everybody out here thinks they never ever intended to put them there anyway. Just things go on and on. The swimming pool, everything. But I think somebody mentioned about transparency, and then we had the government going around north, south, east and west to a listening sort of sessions all over the place, listening and telling the people what they're going to do and everything. So to my amazement, what is the new post that Mr. Cannon's just going to do? Is it an information officer or something where he tells the public what they're doing? But I thought he was already doing that, telling us. So what is this new post? Can you remember what it is?
Oh, good grief. There are so many of them. And I think, what was the other one that is... Oh, no, that was the head of the buses. The head of the buses is now... So if you want to be the head of the buses, the spine is 75,000 to 98,000 a year to be head of buses on the Isle of Man.
I'm going to come out of retirement, honestly. I want one of these jobs. What could I be? I could be in charge of liaison for radio.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's it. Oh, it'd be like the old days, that would, wouldn't it?
But there's something going wrong, isn't there, when there's this like you said, in every single manifesto had transparency in it.
Well, I am sure. The thing is, Eddie, I'm sure that there's a lot of stuff that government does that happens on time, on budget. It's just that we never know about it. I mean, during COVID, they shelled out a lot of money to people. Lots of people in the business sector, their businesses were kept afloat and what have you. So things like that happen properly. They got the vaccinations out and things like that, whether or not you agree with them, it was all done. So, Mr. Quayle's administration got that all done. But the trouble is that when things go wrong, it's the whole thing about bad news, Eddie. Everybody remembers bad news. So,
that's it.
And we've got the Liverpool landing stage sitting there thumbing its nose at us at the moment.
I know that's not finished yet, by the way. It's not open yet, so God knows what the final bill will be. Can I also, while I'm on, Andy, remind everybody again, if there is anybody out there who still believes that a wind farm would be good for the Isle of Man, I doubt if there's anybody left after all the information we put out, but Paul Burgess is on tonight at the Legion.
All right, thanks for that, Eddie.
All right, Andy.
Good to hear from you. And John's on now. Hi, John.
Hi, Andy. Whichever way you look at it, the prom is a mess. They've got so much wrong, it's unbelievable. The only way, I mean, the prom on the sea terminal end is now too narrow. Because when you get a car trying to park, reverse in, everything stops. Now it's holding everything up far more than a horse tram ever did. And I think if they got rid of the grass, widened the prom back to what it was, and put the horse tram lines back where they were in the middle. I don't know why that grass is even whoever dreamt that up must be mad. But it's just too narrow at that point. I mean, everything is wrong with the prom, the lighting, everything about it. And they've got pedestrian crossings, which are there, fair enough, but they've also got these raised bits of road that nobody knows whether they should cross there or not. I really despair at the planning, what they dream up.
So, as far as you're concerned, then, get rid of the grass, put the horse trams back down the middle of the road like they used to be.
And then that makes the prom wider. Because after all, people say, oh, the horse trams hold traffic up. But you only ever seem to get one horse tram out at a time. I remember years ago when I was driving coaches, for instance, you'd get 3 or 4 horse trams in a row. And fair enough, you could get through, but you had to be careful that there wasn't a car sticking out. But now you get one horse tram, and that's not going to hold the traffic up very much.
All right, okay. Appreciate it, John. Thanks for calling.
Okay.
Good to hear from you. 2 UK-registered cars in my area have been there since Christmas. One's got no UK MOT. They seem just to be dumped and nobody cares. Whereabouts is that, then? Just let us know. And if you've got a photo, it'll be interesting, because it just seems that the DOI can get very motivated about some things, but if abandoned cars... well, A, they're taking up a car parking space, and B, they don't look good. So it kind of just falls on everybody. This is anonymous in from, just says, about that report Julian was talking about, the low or non-confidence is due to these sectors having a low level of research. So the high and moderate impacts and risks and the overall assessment of the report that man-made climate change is a real issue to areas of the world. That's from anonymous. Thanks for that. Surely the politicians going to St Helena have shown that carbon emissions don't matter, says G. The government should be using green funds to fix the horse tramway and the prom. It's Monday, and you know what Monday means. Well, Monday and Friday always mean we're delving into the 60th anniversary archive of Manx Radio. Today, normally they're great to listen to. Today, I'm going to tell you, this is a complete exclusive, and it concerns one of the gems of television and one of the all-time heroines of television is on today. We're going back to 1970, and if you know anybody who's a fan of Coronation Street, particularly vintage Coronation Street, tell them to listen. It'll be on the podcast as well. 1970, Peter Kneale, the late Peter Kneale, spoke to Violet Carson, Ina Sharples, who apparently was a big fan of the Isle of Man, used to come to the Isle of Man all the time. So you'll hear Peter Kneale and Violet Carson, one of the matriarchal figures of Coronation Street. She talks about the early success of Coronation Street and why everybody recognised Ina Sharples. That's after Mannin Line today, the late Peter Kneale with Violet Carson, Ina Sharples from Coronation Street.
Housing, benefits or employment issues, faulty goods, bad workmanship, financial problems and relationship breakdowns. We all run into difficulties in life, and it can feel like there's no one who can help you sort them out. But at Manx Citizens Advice Service, we can help. As an independent charity, we offer free, confidential support covering all sorts of areas. You don't need an appointment. Just call in at Promenade Church, Loch Promenade, Douglas, or call 366 338. Open Tuesdays from 12:30 till 3 and Fridays 10 till 12:30. Manx Citizens Advice Service. Your advice service.
Oh, not again.
Oh, that Jack from next door really needs to improve his left foot.
Oh, don't worry. The storm did the damage last time, and it was easy to get a greenhouse pane from Manx Glass and Glazing.
Manx Glass and Glazing don't just do the big jobs. Visit them on Snugborough Trading Estate for all your glazing repairs and supplies. From glass tabletops and picture frame glass to greenhouse glazing, along with good old-fashioned customer service and product knowledge.
Manx Glass and Glazing. You're smashing.
I wanted to open my own business, but where to start? Nicola Bowker Accountants gave me invaluable advice. Really helped me to grow my business, making it stress-free. I get accurate, timely accounts and no fear of penalties. Thank you, Nicola Bowker & Co.
The extended Ramsey Garden Centre is deceptively large. You'll find a warm welcome and everything from bedding and perennials, fruit and vegetables to lighting, garden ornaments, bird baths, bird tables and indoor and outdoor pots. Come and browse at Ramsey Garden Centre.
Until the 14th of July, you have the chance to win an LG 65-inch TV, courtesy of Waltons. Each week on the Manx Radio Facebook page will be a scrambled footballer's name. All you have to do is identify the person. To enter, tune in each weekday evening to Greatest Hits or Saturday Live, where we will announce a window of opportunity and you will have 5 minutes to text your answer and your full name to 166 177. The winner will be announced on Monday the 15th of July, so keep listening for your chance to win with Waltons and your nation station, Manx Radio.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Nursing home care's a real worry, says Andy. I've got relatives who feel very insecure in their old age. Perhaps the assisted dying could help free up spaces, resources and time, which is also saving money for our struggling NHS and civil servant pensions. Just an idea that many want it in place now, not later. That's Andy on 509. Thanks also to Pompey Pete. The grass area is supposed to be where the tram goes, isn't it? Yes, well, Pompey, it is supposed to be where the trams go. It's just that nobody's put the trams there yet. It's either wilding or occasionally gets cut as well. We've got 2 abandoned cars in Arbury Road and Arbury Street in Castletown, one for 2 months, another is a BMW since July last year, both UK registered. Now the DOI know about it, police aren't bothered, says Southern Andy.
Right.
And Tony's on now. Hi, Tony.
Hi, Andy. I've got a solution for the tram lines.
Yeah.
What we need to do is we need to go to the DOI, remove all of their perks and all of their Christmas party money and any bonuses they're going to get, and put that in a pot and put it towards the tram lines, because they're the failure area, and anybody who was associated with basically usurping the law at Tynwald should also be punished.
The thing is, Tony, I wish that, and it was Tim Baker at the time. Now, Tim Baker and Ray Harmer before him, fine politicians, very honourable people as well. But if they just said at the time, look, we're running short of money for the prom, we're going to take it from the horse trams, and it's going to happen later. But nobody did say that. Just like at the start of the promenade, they didn't say this is going to be a giant traffic calming measure. They just introduced everything, and it is a traffic calming measure because they put, I can't believe they're not pedestrian crossings here, there and everywhere, so it slows the whole thing down, and they've taken, 3 or 4 dozen parking spaces away. If they'd only said that at the beginning rather than doing it and looking at their shoes afterwards.
Unfortunately, that's the way of this government and a couple of previous governments. They do things, but they're not telling the truth. They don't want to tell the truth because they know there's going to be a lot of opposition. And they won't stand by what they've done or admit what they've done. because they don't want to.
But surely, if the thing is, if you say, if they know there's going to be opposition, then why don't they use the force of their argument to convert that opposition into agreement rather than just doing it behind people's backs?
Well, unfortunately, that would require open government with open answers and no arguments about freedom of information. But we don't get that. We don't get it because the government is rotten all the way through, as is now the civil service. Because the civil service is what drives it. It's not the government. It's the civil service that the government is supposed to be controlling, and it's really the civil service making the decisions. And they're just, well, it's not my fault. It's we ran out of money, and that's it. You don't get any further explanation. So really, we need to start looking at the civil service and say, if we're going to have a government that just does what the civil service says, we should be electing all the heads of the civil service, and we should get rid of the government completely because they don't do anything. Just a thought. Think of the money you'd save. Just think of it. We'd be able to put 3 tram lines in.
Right.
Oh, we would. You think about it. You add up how much it costs us for the government at £100,000 each.
All right.
That's roughly what it ends up as.
All right.
Pensions.
Good to hear from you,
Good
Tony.
luck.
Thanks for being with us today. And Kev's on now. Hi, Kev.
How you doing, Andy? Okay.
Good, thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, Andy, just want to the horse trams, TT week or any busy day. If you come down from Monken down the hill, get onto the promenade. You got the horse tram going down there on the left-hand side. You get a double-decker bus or a bus behind that horse tram. You can't the bus can't get past the horse tram. So you're stuck then, and it backs up all the way. I've seen it backed up right the way to bottom of Summerhill to the War Memorial. So it needs really, really to be thought about.
Do you think, Kev, do you think they should put the trams back to the sea terminal?
Well, yes, I think they should do that, I think, for heritage. But I think they should just put one in the middle all the way down, which they should have done in the first place, put one all the way down the middle.
All right, okay.
They've only got one out at the moment, haven't they?
Yeah, all right. Good to hear from you. Thanks, Kev.
All right, mate, bye.
All the very best. Did you see the tweets, by the way, about the Sir Mark Cavendish Cycleway? Apparently, Mark Cavendish was knighted at the weekend, and Sir Mark Cavendish, imagine that.
When the Mannin Line's not on air, call Manx Radio to leave your opinion for broadcast on 682 631.
So, do you think there should be a Sir Mark Cavendish Cycleway on the Isle of Man? Well done also, Captain Carter with his MBE, and Milky Quayle, British Empire Medal. Well done to the 3 of them. It's a week on Saturday. The Tour de France starts, 29th of June. So we keep our fingers crossed. We'll be on Cav Watch here. 2 weeks today, Wimbledon starts. 2 weeks on Thursday. Is it the... Crikey, is it really? It's the UK general election. 3 weeks this Friday. It's Timble Day. Oh, so it's 3 weeks on Thursday, the UK election. 3 weeks on Friday is Timble Day. Very busy. The summer solstice. It's affected me. Right, that's it. Stand by for Ina Sharples, and thanks to Chris Quirk on the phones today.
WINT. 60 years serving you as the nation station. This is Manx Radio.
A legend now from a legendary TV series, Violet Carson, Ina Sharples from Coronation Street, who used to visit this island regularly. Apologies for the quality of what is an antique but a very valuable recording.
I've been coming to the Isle of Man since I was knee-high to a grasshopper, since I was about 7 years old.
Yes.
I've made all my sand castles and built my sand pies and things on the beach here.
You find when you come over here it is a relaxing holiday?
Oh yes, it's so away from everything. It's never altered, which is what I like about it. It is exactly the same. I'm rather the sort of person who likes the things that I've loved all the years to stay with me. Yes. And this is what I've got against life in general at the moment. It's all moving too quickly, but the Isle of Man doesn't. It's absolutely delightful.
Yeah. Talking about things that haven't changed, Coronation Street, in 10 years, since the 9th of December 1960, it hasn't changed an awful lot, has it?
No, it's I think a lot of people have got that against it. They say that it ought to be all pulled down and we ought to have tower blocks flats, which of course I resist very much. But I think by and large the thing that people like about it, that it does go on, and those houses are still the same, and they're the people they know.
I think it's one programme, it would be fair to say, that confounded the critics.
I had never any doubt about it. I was a very reluctant actress. I didn't really want to take the part when I realised it was going to be serial. And our first episode went out live, as you know. And I felt it in my bones then. I thought, this is it. This is going to run, despite what people said. But then, of course, you see, most people, I think, crab anything for the first time. It's always got to settle down. There are always people say, take that thing off, it's awful. But it's, the blood and bones of it were there. It was real, you see.
Well, what do you put down its tremendous popularity? I mean, it's in the top 10 ratings week after week, year in, year out. It's what is it? The reality that attracts
It's the reality of it. It's everyman. Everybody knows somebody, or even knows themselves through the people in the street. I mean, the old girl herself, for weeks after it started, the producer's desk was covered with letters saying, oh, I know Ina Sharple, she's my mother, she's my Auntie Lizzie, she's the woman across the road, she's the woman next door. She's somebody that everybody knows, she's in every street, everywhere.
Part of Island life for 60 years. This is your Manx Radio.